I some
What?
sort of
No,
clown to you?
I hate my job.
Hello all, and welcome to a special episode of The Outcast, Jared Reacts, where I will be reacting to a video. This one specifically is Peter Ducey asking Karine Jean-Pierre if the White House is going to tone down the rhetoric concerning political rhetoric concerning Trump and calling him a threat after the 2 assassination attempts. So let's go ahead and just start playing that clip, and we'll get my reaction throughout the clip.
Thank you, Karine. It's been only 2 days since somebody allegedly tried to kill Donald Trump again. And you're here at the podium in the White House briefing room calling him a threat. How many more assassination attempts on Donald Trump until the president and the vice president and you pick a different word to describe Trump other than threat?
Peter, if anything from this administration, I actually completely disagree with the premise of your question, the question that you're asking. It is also incredibly dangerous in the way that you're asking it, because American people are watching. And to say that from an administration who has consistently condemned political violence, from an administration where the president called the former president and was thankful, grateful that he was okay, from an administration who has called out January 6th, called out the attack of Paul Pelosi, called out and said we need to lower the temperature after the Butler incident, and now for you to make that kind of comment in your question, because your question involved a comment and a statement. And, it is, that is also incredibly dangerous when we have been very clear in condemning political violence from here.
Okay, let's just pause it right here for a second. So, Peter Ducey was asking, after 2 assassination attempts, on President Trump, former President Trump, whether or not the White House will just use another word other than threat, whether he's their political opponent, whether he has contrasting ideals or policies to what the White House is purporting. And yet Karine Jean-Pierre doubles down on defending why the White House should continue calling President Trump, former President Trump, a threat. Even after, because of that very specific language, there have been not 1, but 2 attempted assassinations on his life. And Karine Jean-Pierre responds to that question and says that's a dangerous question. The question of asking, do you think that you might be sparking political violence, is a question that would spark political violence? He's just asking when the White House will tone down the rhetoric. But asking when to tone down rhetoric is now dangerous. Karine also says that the White House has called for the rhetoric to be toned down after January 6th, after the attack on Paul Pelosi, after the Butler incident. And yet, they may have called for it to be toned down, but what evidence have we seen that the White House has toned down the rhetoric? Literally in this very clip, Karine Jean-Pierre is defending using inflammatory rhetoric of calling Donald Trump a threat to democracy. Let's continue on.
What I have said about the president, the former president, about January 6th is facts that you all have reported. It is fact. When you have a former president who basically says that the election wasn't, the results of the election were not the results of the election. When dozens of more than 60 Republican judges said that it was a free and fair election. More than 60 said it was indeed a free and fair election. You had more than 2,000 people who were told to go to the Capitol. It was one of the darkest days of our democracy. One of the darkest days. There were people law enforcement officers who died because of what happened at the Capitol. And they were there because the former president told them to go there. I mean, I don't know if that's not a threat in our democracy when it was one of the darkest days of our democracy, January 6th, one of the darkest days. And
point.
so we have been very clear from here.
So she starts off by saying that the White House condemns political violence, and then she just shifts to target Trump over January 6th, saying that January 6th is one of the darkest days of our democracy, and yet I don't think it was one of the darkest days of our democracy, and frankly, at this point, 3 years later, not many other people other than Democrats think that it is the darkest day, one of the darkest days in our democracy. With people going to the Capitol and rioting there or protesting, when rioters attack Capitol Police, yes, that is awful. However, there were other people, other protesters there that were just peacefully walking through the Capitol. I believe one of the darkest days in our democracy would be 9/11, when terrorists attacked the World Trade Centers. I believe another darker days of our democracy would probably be when the former president and current Republican presidential nominee was almost shot in the head on live national television. I think that would be one of the darker days of our democracy. And she's saying that the protesters are there because Trump sent him. Yes, Trump sent them down to the Capitol. But guess what else he sent them? He sent them with a message saying, peacefully and patriotically protest. That is not inflammatory political rhetoric. That is very specific instructions that some people did not follow. Let's keep on.
Now, we can have a disagreement on policies. We can, on issues. That is what we should do. It is important to have those disagreements. It is welcome to have those disagreements on the economy, on healthcare, on foreign policy. But when you start bringing political rhetoric, that is not okay. And that's what you've heard from us, too. You've heard of differences on policies.
Okay, stop. She's talking about the fact that during these questions, during politics, you should be asking about policies, you should be talking about policies, and not political rhetoric. Yet, this question is about her defending her political rhetoric. She says that politics should be talking about policies, that you should have a debate, that you should have discussions on differing positions. And then she goes and uses political rhetoric while saying you shouldn't be using political rhetoric. She can't follow what she's saying. She can't take her own advice. They have a double standard for Democrats versus Trump. Let's keep watching.
But to your point, there are people watching at home who might miss the part where you say, let's lower the temperature, and there are mentally unstable people who are attempting to kill political candidates, attempting to kill Donald Trump, and they are still hearing this White House refer to him as a threat. Is there no concern that people are taking that literally?
We're using examples. We're not just saying that just to say it. January 6th, Peter. January 6th. Wait, January 6th. How many times do we have to? January 6th, 2021. That is a fact, what was reported that happened on that day by some of your colleagues.
So, Peter Ducey's asking, there are people who might be missing your calls to tone down the rhetoric. So why do you keep using inflammatory rhetoric? They never stopped. They may have said, oh, we want to tone down our political rhetoric. But that doesn't matter if you don't do it. You might say something, but your actions speak louder than your words. And then she's saying, well, we're citing examples of why he's a threat. And they give one example, January 6th. And then she says, I'm not repeating it just to repeat it. Yes, you are. You literally said January 6th 4 times in a row in under 10 seconds. You were just saying it to say it. You were saying it to use it as a club to beat Trump over the head with. Trump is the seal, January 6th is the club, and they're having a great time clubbing seals over there. But she says January 6th is a fact. You know what else is a fact? Trump is the only candidate to have 2 assassination attempts on his life during this race. That's also a fact. There may be some threats against Kamala, but there have been actual assassination attempts on Trump. That's also a fact. Let's move on.
I mean, and we have at the same time denounced political violence over and over, political rhetoric over and over again. Over and over again. But I know your focus has to be on this side of the house. It can't be on your side of the house. I get that. I get that. But we also have to be careful on how you're asking me these questions. People are watching, and is what you are saying about us raising political violent rhetoric, whatever, however you just formulated it, this is an administration that has denounced and condemned any type of political rhetoric or violence. It is the reason why this president decided to run in 2020. That is why the president decided to come back. He believed that it is important to save the soul of America, of our nation, and he believed it was important that we continue to fight for our democracy, fight for our freedom. That's what you see from this administration. I'm moving on. Go ahead, Ed.
And we've gotten to the end of it. Okay, so Karine Jean-Pierre says the White House denounces and condemns political violence and political rhetoric, and then doubles down on calling Trump a threat to democracy. So is that not political rhetoric? No, it's a fact, because Trump is a threat to democracy, and that's why we've ended up at the situation where Trump has 2 assassination attempts on his life. You can say that you denounce political rhetoric, that you denounce political violence, but it doesn't matter when your own words are used to inspire political violence in unhinged people, because they take what you are saying seriously even if you do not. Then she says, this is the reason why Joe Biden came into office, to save the soul of America. He's fighting for freedom and democracy. So what does that mean is on the other side? That Trump is trying to destroy the soul of America, corrupt it, that he's fighting to take away your freedoms and overturn democracy. He's trying to turn it into a tyranny, into an oligarchy. You can't say that you denounce political rhetoric with one hand, and with the other hand, label your opponent a threat to democracy, especially after your own political rhetoric has inspired 2 assassination attempts on his life. And yes, it has inspired that assassination attempt, especially the second one, seeing as the attempted assassin, his vehicle had a Biden-Harris bumper sticker on it. You can tell whose political rhetoric he was listening to. It's time for people to tone down the political rhetoric, not say that this will be the last election. It's time for what Karine Jean-Pierre was saying to actually be true on both sides, and not just blame Trump for political rhetoric, for inflammatory rhetoric. Both sides need to cool down the temperature and realize that while the election and how it goes determines the fate of America, it determines the direction of America and the vision in which it pursues, it is not the end if you lose. It is not the end if you win. There will be future elections, and it is up to each party to convince the American people that their vision for America is the correct vision. Thank you for listening with me. This has been a special edition the Jared Reacts Outcast podcast, and we hope to have you again soon. Thank you. Bye.